Betsy's position.
Okay, it says, what is Bessie position on RSD? And what is Bessie position? Okay. Well, I can speak for Bessie. I only can speak for Carolyn. I'm not going to speak for Bessie as a whole. But Bessie's job is to govern RSD. Our job is we are the governing body over the Recovery School District. So any and everything that they do, they have to get the approval through Bessie. Now, what's my position, which I just stated, I'm not in favor of the Recovery School District. I believe that if we give the local school districts the resources and the funding that they need, that our children will succeed. So, thank you.
Carolyn, stay put. I said I had several questions.
Oh, wow.
That's your turn on the hot seat. The Advocate reported that the Compass teacher evaluation results for East Baton Rouge Parish combined EBR public school system teacher scores with the RSD Baton Rouge teacher scores. Is this true? And if so, why were the results combined?
I received a call from a legislator in reference to this particular issue. I currently have the staff investigating it for me to get accurate information, but to my understanding, according to EBR, that the scores were combined. And if that's the case, that's unacceptable.
They were.
Yeah.
Will you provide the EBR public schools systems Compass results for EBR public school system, excluding the RSD data, to the media?
Well, currently, as I stated, I do have the Bessie team investigating it for me to get the information, the accurate information. Therefore, once I do receive the accurate information, I don't mind publicizing that, giving that information to the community, because I do believe in transparency.
Okay, Carolyn, I'm sorry. What happened to the $12 million of grant money for the TAP program that Advanced Baton Rouge had been granted a couple of years ago?
Wow. Well, I'm not aware of that, and so I'm not going to answer a question that I'm not aware. But what I would do is I'll find out, and I will make sure that the information, the accurate information, gets back to you, Ms. G.
If you would, because I have the email addresses, and anybody who is not here by reservation, leave your email address, and whatever Ms. Hill sends me, I will pass on to all of you.
And not only that, I see Ms. Johnson in the audience. Are you familiar with it, or? I'm sorry, I'm so busy talking to the newspaper. Oh, okay. maybe she may be able to.
Then can you address the TAP question? The question, what happened to the $12 million of grant money for the TAP program that Advanced Baton Rouge had been granted a couple of years ago?
Well, it was granted to them. It was granted to them.
Come up here.
I don't think there's been any real accountability since it was granted.
Right.
So I think that Ms. Hill,
Come up here and say that to the
okay, it was actually granted when I served on Bessie to Advanced Baton Rouge when they was doing the TAP program. I don't think there's been any real accountability. So, I'll tell Ms. Hill that if I were you, I'd ask for the accountability on the $12 million. Because it is critical that we need to know what happens with with public monies that go to organizations that may not fulfill the requirements of what we gave them the money for. And I think most people who don't know me know I'm not a big Advanced Baton Rouge person.
No. They went bankrupt on the subject.
Can I follow up on that? Just
Yeah, let me get this into the record. According to Mike Decatel, okay, who's very knowledgeable about these matters, he said you can break out the individual RSD schools, and they are all extremely low except for Kenilworth. That was his contribution. Now, Linda, if you'd like to go up there.
I was just going to and adding about the accountability of charter schools and what happens when they close, because I think that that the RSD after so many years will close a charter school and give it a new reconstitution and try to find a successful charter to operate it and to achieve the outcomes that they're looking for. But one of the problems when charter schools are closed is that sometimes they leave owing money. So it's my understanding that currently right now the East Baton Rouge Parish Public School System is owed about $250,000 from 2 charter schools who were closed by the RSD. They send actually a bill out every month to these charter schools. One of them is the $200 and something thousand bill, which was, that charter was run by Advanced Baton Rouge, 100 Black Men, and I cannot remember the other. And so that's an issue for me as a taxpayer, as well as a parent participating in the East Baton Rouge Parish Public School System, is that those are our local tax dollars that were given to private operators, and now we are responsible for debts that they owe. And that's problematic. They were given the money to operate those schools and left owing money to Entergy that we had to pay to keep lights on at school. And so these are things that, when it comes to accountability, while I can say, that I'm happy that the RSD goes and looks for charters that will be more successful than the ones that they had, it's troubling that there's not the financial accountability there to make sure that our taxpayer dollars are being used wisely.
This brings up a question, and this goes to all of you. The question is, in this grand scheme of this experiment of RSD, charter schools, and voucher schools, if they do not prove, after the public school system is dismantled, financially or otherwise, or crippled, and if these charters or vouchers programs, if these operators walk away like they did in Arizona, what happens to our kids?
I can answer that.
Come back.
Jump up there. You want this one?
Yeah, tall.
He's tall.
My business as an attorney picks up. I do a lot of criminal defense. I'm just going to cut right to the chase. But that's business I don't want to have, because these kids are salvageable if they are in trouble. To expound on that a little bit, come sit in any city court, any district court, and you see what happens. When a child or a young adult is entering a plea to a minor offense or a major offense, one of the first questions a judge asks is, how far did you go in school? And you will be surprised. Now, how does that tie into public schools, RSD, private schools, charters, vouchers, whatever? If we collectively up here aren't putting out the best product, government structure, parental involvement, our kids are going to fail. And we're going to have a cycle. We're going to go home every afternoon. We're going to hear about, it's not going to just be in the district that I represent in 70805. It's going to be down here in what is this area called? 70809, 70812. So it could cause an epidemic. Baton Rouge, and I've lived here all my life with the exception of a year, is a small city with big city problems. And education is one of them. And we can debate what's the best structure. But unless we put our collective minds together and do what's right for children and not political philosophy, the community as a whole is going to suffer.
I'd like to reiterate what he said, because that's every president since Richard Nixon has had an agenda for public education. They all have a plan, every president. Nixon, with the exception maybe Ford, because he wasn't there long enough, but Carter, Reagan, both Bushes, Bill Clinton, and now Obama, all have a plan to restructure education. Every 4 to 8 years, they completely scrap the whole program and they start over. They're reinventing the wheel with every administration in Washington. We can't keep on doing that, because you're just throwing these kids into turmoil. And you mentioned it takes time to build these schools. After 8 years after Katrina, there are enough construction companies in this country that these contracts could have been let a long time ago. They could have been bid out. They could have had the architects do their work. They could have started construction. There's no reason why we're still waiting 8 years after Katrina to start construction on George Washington and Carver. On the other hand, we did build Lake Area High School in New Orleans. I visited that school. If you read the book, All the King's Men, Willie Stark, the protagonist in that book, got his political career started when he questioned the construction quality of a school in his hometown. Nobody listened to him until there was a tragedy there, and I think it was a fire escape fail, killed several children, and all of a sudden he became a hero and he was catapulted into the governor's office. If you go to Lake Arion High School and inspect that construction down there, we have a Willie Stark in the waiting, people. I went down there and looked at that school. The stairwells are coming separated from the wall already. That's a brand new school building. And the stairwells are becoming separated from the wall. And you can see spaces between the wall. When you stand on one of the landing areas between floors, you can see the spaces down to the next landing. Spaces about that wide, separated from the wall. The building blocks don't even meet up. They're not flush. They're not plumb. It's the worst construction job I have ever seen. And I grew up around a grandfather that did concrete construction. I know a little bit about construction, and that's shoddy work, and somebody's going to get killed in that school. And this is what we're looking at. And we're playing games, political games with these children, and this cannot go on.
Okay, the next question comes up. The Baton Rouge Area Chamber opposed the creation of the Southeast Breakaway District unless, among other things, there are mutually agreed upon formula for dealing with legacy cost between the new district and the previous district, in addition to a plan to ensure financial stability of all impacted districts, including the financial impact on any additional facility needs. New Schools Baton Rouge has a goal 12,000 students, 60% larger than the proposed Southeast District. Have the Baton Rouge Area Chamber concerns about the breakaway district been resolved as they pertain to the achievement zone?
You're the expert on that.
I mean, what I can tell you is that legacy cost, if the Baton Rouge Achievement Zone were to have 12,000 students, that would mean that estimates of the legacy cost in last year's dollars would probably range from $70 million to almost $300 million, depending upon how you calculate it. So there are actuarial ways of calculating how long school districts ought to have to pay for those retiree costs. But so for the Southeast School District, which will have about 7,000 students in it, the estimates in the Baton Rouge Area Chamber Richardson report range from 44,000 to about 260 million, or 44 million to 260 million. And so if the Achievement Zone has 12,000 students, I mean, you can roughly double that. And those are the dollars that would be taken out of the MFP of the East Baton Rouge Parish Public School System students, right? So now with just 2,000 students, that's $168 taken out of every child's backpack, right? What does that look like if it's 12,000? If it's 12,000 students, that's an enormous amount of money that, again, for 2 years now, with the Memorandum of Understanding with the East Baton Rouge Parish School System, they're supposed to be trying to figure out how to reimburse the school district for those dollars, and nothing has happened yet. It should scare the pants off of you as a taxpayer to think about what's going to happen to the funding in East Baton Rouge Parish if they cannot resolve the issue of legacy costs, and the Baton Rouge Achievement Zone is capable of attracting those students into it.
If I could.
Yeah.
I just want to reiterate again, I really appreciate the opportunity to come in here and talk and have this conversation with you. First of all, the Baton Rouge Achievement Zone is not a breakaway school district. It's just a way to try to have a focused effort on serving the kids that are as I said earlier, who are in schools that I think all of us would agree their needs aren't being met, the community's needs aren't being met. But, you know, the question that keeps coming to my mind in response to a question earlier of what happens when recovery school district, charter school fails, I think it's a quite cynical approach to suggest that it's because of charter schools that kids are in the judicial system. I think the better question is what happens when schools fail our communities for decades? Whether they be a traditional school or a charter school is irrelevant. The real conversation is, are we going to allow thousands of kids to go with their educational needs unmet because we don't agree with a specific policy or not? Because we think one organization somehow has a nefarious purpose and the other organization is fine and dandy. We have for a long time, long before the recovery school district showed up, way too many, far too many kids in New Orleans, in Baton Rouge, in small parishes, in large parishes alike, who are in schools, have gone through schools where they have not gotten what they need. What we should be doing is focusing in on an effort to change that. Let's change those outcomes. And while I agree with a lot of what's been said, like we've got a lot of work to do to make sure we are doing the right things, to make sure we meet our mission, we meet our goals. We're not there yet. I would not be one who's to stand here and tell you that. But I do stand here more committed than when I walked through the door of rolling up my sleeves and getting to work to, to help change some of those outcomes that some of the other speakers talked about. I asked them to join with us in figuring it out, and not just, let's not just resort to pointing out the problems, but let's also figure out how we can work together to come up with the solution sets that I think we all want for all of our kids. It's not just about my kid or your neighbor's kids, but it's about every kid in this parish. None of us are going to be in the place that we want to be until all of these kids get the opportunity, and a true opportunity, to be successful in life. So I would just, try to appeal to everyone. Yes, there's a lot to be desired in both districts, but that shouldn't get in the way of us working collaboratively together to try to bring solutions for those kids. So that's my thoughts. Thanks.
Don't go away. I got one for you. We're going to start with you. And it seems very timely based on what you just said. Mayfair Lab is under threat of being taken over. Why would the state take away a school that is modeled for success where parents are highly involved?
I don't think the recovery school district has made any effort to take over Mayfair, unless I'm unaware of something, but it is a school that was on the list of schools that are eligible to enter the recovery school district, but I don't think the recovery school district has made an affirmative move to do that.
Dana, one thing, if you're resetting the cycle for charters and other variety of schools out there, why can't you reset it for Mayfair?
Thank you.
As I
Delmont.
said,
And
the
Delmont.
recovery school district has not taken any action towards taking over Mayfair schools, so I can't.
And
again,
Delmont.
you can't. And Delmont, you can't hold me accountable for something that we haven't done. The school became eligible because it wasn't meeting the academic standard of kids.
But that's where...
And so the school system has worked to develop its plan of action for how to address it. And I think you have to give LDOE and RSD officials an opportunity to determine what those next steps are.
Okay, I think this is where Mr. Peterson and I will agree. RSD is not going to, prior to Delmont and Mayfair Middle School, Delmont Elementary School was eligible for takeover. And I'm quite sure Mr. Smith will come up and explain. However, EBR came up with a brilliant plan, which I supported that plan, to restructure the schools. And so in return, that's how they were able to do Mayfield Laboratory School with the combination with LSU Lab. Now, I have expressed this to the board. I have expressed this to Superintendent Taylor, that EBR has not done anything illegal with restructuring the school district as a whole, that they follow proper procedures, they follow proper policies, and to continue to move forward with their plan. So,
Just briefly, the Mayfair Delmont issue is a very sticky situation. Yes, they were eligible for school takeover, and as soon as the board and the superintendent put forth a plan to reconfigure partnership with LSU Lab and do Delmont as, I think it was a pre-K kindergarten, and we were requesting site codes, the same thing that RSD does when they take a charter and give it to someone else. We got flack. And if I could go back in my emails, I could read an email from State Superintendent John White denying what we were trying to do. The same thing that RSD tries to do. We're trying to reconfigure schools to meet the needs of kids. So that's a very good question, and that's an ongoing saga, and it's very touchy.